Greetings to everyone, all our brothers and sisters across the world, in different countries, in different continents, in different time zones. We are so grateful to the entire humanity to be the part of this particular webinar series. We have come a long way. Today is the 626th webinar, Making Education Relevant. It's a global confluence of visionaries, intellectuals, and all my teachers from whom I want to learn. I want to learn as much as I can. As Saturday and Sunday evenings are dedicated to our brothers and sisters, those are Indian diaspora, non-resident Indian, but some of them have done remarkable in life as a Indian diaspora, and thereafter they find that why not to get back to the roots and to do something as a basic cause. This evening is a very, very special evening for me because so much of inputs have been given to me by Dr. Vivek Shankar Natarajanji that today's distinguished speaker, today's distinguished guest is an extraordinary human being on this planet from whom we all have to learn a lot. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, join me in extending a very hearty welcome to Honorable Dr. Srinivasan Jayakumarji. He is the chairman, Arsha Vidya Satsanga. He is the co-founder, Indian History Awareness and Research, Houston, USA. He is also the founder of Arsha Seva Kendram, Coimbatore, which is in Tamil Nadu for the benefit of those people. Those are joining me as natives from the foreign countries. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our chamber feels there are two gifts which have been given to us. That is the best gift which God has given to is our youth, our children, and how they can contribute well to the humanity. Our chamber has come a long way since 1994. We are in the service of our Indian diaspora, our brothers and sisters, as well as Indian corporate, those are here. During the lockdown, doctors, nurses, paramedical people, they have done great job because the whole world has passed through a very difficult times in 2020. But as they are great warriors, I feel our teachers, our educators, our principals, our vice chancellors, our counselors, and particularly technocrats who take my voice to you, they are also great warriors. So making education relevant, all of us. Values and ethics led practical education in ancient times. The new education policy 2020, which has been given by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, great salutation to this person, along with his adjutant, that is Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank, the Honorable Education Minister of India. Under the able guidance of Honorable Prime Minister of India, the new education policy, once it gets implemented, it's going to be the game changer for the whole universe. I do not want to look back, but today when I see there are 1,028 universities, there are 40,000 colleges, there are 15 lakh schools, and there are 31.5 crore students. And ladies and gentlemen, still we should think about why do we talk about smart city? Why not to talk about smart village? Why do we talk about smart classroom? Why not to talk about creative classroom? So anyway, as the journey will proceed, we will talk about it. Our chamber has taken the agenda that 2021 is dedicated to teachers and youth empowerment, what we are taking on, and our service industry contribution towards Atmanirbhar Bharat. Of course, there are different verticals, but the main focus is making education relevant. Education should be relevant to my day-to-day life, my living. Water crisis is going to be the next agenda because we all got to look into it. If we do not save water, the world is going to pass through difficult times. And that is the research which we have collected in last 10 months. Ladies and gentlemen, water conservation, home, schools, colleges, universities, public places, and that all will get empowerment when we empower our women, because women empowerment is very, very important. Our health and wellness, जैसा हम सोचते हैं वैसे हम बन जाते हैं. लोग कहते हैं जैसा अन्न वैसा मन. So people, those are watching, what we eat, I think our thought process also. So thereby the organic farming, organic cultivation. But when I talk about Sir Ken Robinson, he says there's a purpose of education. There are four purposes. I said, what are they? He says economic, culture, social, and personal. So ladies and gentlemen, when I look at that, Every parent tells their children, so कब काम शुरू कर रहे हो? तुम अपनी पढ़ाई कब खत्म कर रहे हो? When would you start working? When would you start taking up something? So ladies and gentlemen, over there, startup, entrepreneurship, micro, small and medium enterprise, youth empowerment, teachers empowerment, and then of course, Atmanirbhar Bharat, we all got to make it. Honorable Prime Minister of India's agenda that India has to become self-reliant. Nowadays, our chamber is with the sector skill councils. There are 37 sector skill councils in India under the aegis of Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. We started with health sector, we came to entrepreneurship sector, we came to media entertainment sector skill council, and nowadays we are with the wellness sector skill council because all children, as the schools and colleges are reopening, they need mental wellness and physical wellness. In a very humble way, 12 hours every day, our chamber is dedicating towards whatsoever humble we can contribute to the universe. We are organizing almost 35 webinars per week now, and there is right from the morning till evening. In a humble way, we would like to submit in 1994, when I moved out of the Ministry of Tourism and Indian Army, we set up basically the whole concept of finishing lab, finishing school. What for? Soft skills and life skills. Life skills are more important than the living skills. And then, till 25th of January, what we are talking about, the entire research what we have carried out from 152 countries data collection by our chamber, that is B2B is no more business to business. It is back to basics of life. Sustainable development in the world, basic food, basic health, basic education, sustainable development model. And ladies and gentlemen, this morning we started, and today, because the foundation got to be strong, today we celebrated and deliberated whole day with the principals on Atal Tinkering Lab of the Niti Ayog, because in schools, how the creativity has to be brought out. And thereafter, we brought another program, Atal Innovation Mission. And there was another one, Atal Innovation Mission. The whole day we dedicated. Thereafter, in the evening at 5 p.m., we had Swami Vivekananda's inspiration for today's youth with the Honorable Vice Chancellor from Dr. Ambedkar University. Thereafter, we had gone to Ayurveda. This is Sunday's program. I'm just sharing. Dr. Parmeshwar Arora, he talked about common skin ailments and their treatments. And tomorrow morning, we are going to have Vidya Se Adhyatam Vidya Ki Aur every Sunday morning integrative series of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and 10 Principal Upanishad. Tomorrow, we also talk about ways to resource management. These are the experts, those are working on that. Tomorrow evening, we talk about micro, small, medium enterprise. So, ladies and gentlemen, whatsoever human mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Let's get together for the good cause. This evening, my great salutation, my pranam to Dr. Srinivasan Jayakumar ji, the chairman, Arsha Vidya Satsanga, co-founder, Indian History Awareness and Research, Houston, USA, founder, Arsha Seva Kendram, Coimbatore. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Srinivasan Jayakumar ji, he is Ph.D. with 25 years of experience in the chemical industry. He studied Vedanta for over 20 years under Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati of Arsha Vidya Gurukulam. In Houston, USA, beginning in 2001, he established Vedanta and Samskritam program for adults and Vedic Heritage program for children, which are still running. In the USA, Dr. Jayakumar ji founded Arsha Vidya Satsanga and Indian History Awareness in 2010. Hindus of the Greater Houston awarded him the Akhil Chopra Unsung Hero award for his leadership and service to the Houston community. After deciding to quit his corporate career and returning to India in 2015, Dr. Jayakumar ji spent 2 years full-time in the ashram of Swami Dayananda Saraswati ji. He currently teaches Vedanta and Samskritam and gives motivational talk to teachers, parents, and students. In 2019, he founded Arsha Seva Kendram in India to continue teaching Vedanta and Sanskrit. He teaches Dharma, civilization, ethos to youth, serve Bharat in times of need. In 2020, the non-profit trust conducted over a dozen courses, provided food to the migrant laborers and underprivileged people during this particular pandemic, coronavirus. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, I'm also thankful to Dr. Vivek Shankar Natarajanji, the professor of marketing from the Lamar University, Texas. He is the person and he is the source who is trying to get all the knowledge and the wisdom from the world over. And I am humble student this evening who would like to learn the best possible way. And I don't wish to take more time. I've taken 10 minutes of mine, and let's roll over. And I hand over to Professor Vivek Shankar Natarajanji to take on further the deliberations.
Gulshan ji, namaste. Jayakumar ji, namaste. And मेरे जो भारत के सारे देशवासी हैं, I just wish to wish them again. This was the week of Ganatantra Divas. It's a proud moment for every Indian that we are a strong and increasingly Atmanirbhar Republic of India. Although we may be a relatively younger republic in the firmament of democracies, we are a very ancient civilization. And we need to rediscover that identity. And as we rediscover our identity, I think that is when we can start to make more and increase, make even more contributions to humanity at large. So that is the thesis on which I think this session is going to happen. How do we understand what is our civilizational heritage? And for that, we could not have asked for somebody better than my elder brother, my guru, my good friend, Sri Jayakumar ji. Jayakumar ji, as they say, we used to say he's kind of a one-man civilizational army. And sometimes, as Vivekananda ji said, give me one man with a firm determination, I'll change the world. And he probably was referring to people of the nature of Sri Jayakumar ji. I can go on and on about his background. Let me give you a little snapshot, and then I think I want to really make sure we all listen to him. आज हम वक्ता बनने नहीं आए हैं. गुलशन जी, आपने कहा कि हम सुनेंगे. हम भी वक्ता, जब जय कुमार जी बोलेंगे तो किसी को वक्ता बनने की आवश्यकता नहीं है, सबको श्रोतागण बनना है. भगवान ने हम सबको दो कान दिया है, सिर्फ एक मुंह दिया है तो सबको सुनना है. और जय कुमार जैसे उनकी वाणी सुनने का तो बहुत हमने बहुत पुण्य किया है, इसलिए उनको आज सुनने में मिल रहा है. तो ये बात है. So a little background about Jayakumar ji. Jayakumar ji is basically a product of IIT. He's actually grown up in the city of Hyderabad. So he's kind of, Hyderabad sits at the cusp of northern and southern Indian cultures, and he hails from the Tanjavur district. So he is very rooted in our tradition from a family standpoint. His family is very deeply committed to Indian culture. Having grown up in Hyderabad, he's comfortable with both north and southern part of India. And then he went to the prestigious Institute of Technology, Madras, where he got a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. And from there, he has already accumulated enough of Eastern, education. He moves to West, typical story, comes to Purdue University, gets a Ph.D. And he was saying, I was one of those people who used to be in my apartment, typically advisor, budweiser. That's really what we used to do as doctoral students. But suddenly one day he goes to a lecture by Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati. And Pujya Swamiji had a knack of converting all of us who thought we knew better into somebody who would become seekers of true knowledge. So that is what a guru does. Takes people, we think we know a lot, then he comes and puts down not in a bad way, but then puts us on the path of true knowledge. So he became attached to Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati. He made his life mission, as they say, as Bhagavad Gita says, pariprashnena sevaya. So by repeated questioning and seva to the guru, you can attain knowledge. So he followed that dictum. In fact, the Mundaka Upanishad says, Gurumeva bhikachet shrotriyam samitpanihi shrotriyam brahmanishtam. So he found the guru and he just stuck with him. That's all he does. And then Jayakumar can talk, he will talk more about it. So he became a student of Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati. All along became a karma yogi, pursuing his academic pursuits. Then professionally, he was in Indiana, then Chicago, then moved to Houston. And so he used to be in the oil and gas. He used to be in oil industry working as a senior supply chain management consultant. But that was one part. That was the Jayakumar that was in the West. And that was, he was getting a paycheck. But evening, he would come back to his apartment, and many a time what he did was he did meditation. Simple apartment. He could have lived in 10x the size of his apartment, but he used to be in a small apartment. He would come and he would do Bhuta Yagya, he would, and Manushya Yagya, he would feed the birds. Then he would start teaching Sanskrit, and he used to teach Vedanta, and he used to drive nook and for those people who are not familiar with Houston, it's a very big city. So one day he would go to this part of Houston, and another day he used to go to this part of Houston. What was he doing? He was teaching Sanskrit, Bhagavad Gita, and class after class. And then on top of it, he was also deeply committed. He's also been deeply committed to Aim for Seva, Chatralaya scheme that Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati launched. He spent a lot of money, and his own money and also his time, doing fundraising. At some point, he said, all of that is good. I've done enough seva. Let me go for Jnanam. And 2015, as India was facing, we were moving to a new civilizational ethos under a new political regime, he moved to Bharat, did Vedanta Shravana, and now he has become a teacher in his own right. So here is a person who has gone the full circle, and he's a man who could talk to anybody and hold his own. But now his whole passion is about educating younger children, especially people who come from migrant labor backgrounds. He is doing Annadanam, he is doing Vidya Danam, and of course, he has also started the Indian history awareness. And he was one of the persons who hosted Rajiv Malhotra very early on. We hosted some of the I was part of his Sena, so to speak, Vanar Sena. But he has hosted Rajiv Malhotra. Many good events have happened under the Indian History Awareness Research Group. Arsha Vidya Satsanga is doing a lot of wonderful work. I have been glad to have been a fellow comrade, fellow soldier with him in all of these endeavors. And whenever I see Jayakumar, he's nothing short of inspirational. So with that words, I'm sorry I took a little more time because there's a personal narrative here. Jayakumar ji is going to talk about India's civilizational heritage, why we need to bring it into Indian education system, the role of Sanskrit, and all that, and many much more. So without much ado, as I told you, हम आज वक्ता बनने नहीं आए हैं, हम भी श्रोता बनने आए हैं. तो जयकुमार जी, सादर प्रणाम, वंदे मातरम, भारत देश हिताय कुरु सेवाम त्वम. That's what Swami Dayananda Saraswati says. So he's a man who is doing seva day in and day out for Bharata Desha Hitaya. Thank you, Jayakumar. Thank you, Gulshan ji. Jayakumar ji, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gulshan ji. Thank you, Vivek ji. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anytime if there is an audio issue, just let me know with a sign or something. So thank you all for that introduction. I don't think I deserve that kind of praises. I think Gulshan ji, what you're doing is just absolutely amazing, and nothing less than phenomenal, and looking out for the country, what's best for the country. I think you're looking at it holistically. So I appreciate all that, and thank you for providing me a stage here. Thanks, Vivek, for rekindling a lot of good memories and a lot of good associations in Houston. And Houston really took care of me. That's what whenever people ask me about Houston, that's what I tell them. They took care of me, and and they made me do whatever they did, whatever we discussed. And so thanks to Houston for that. So today, what I wanted to do was, Gulshanji's idea was education system in India. So what can we do different? That was his original proposal. And so when I thought about that, I've been thinking about it for many years. All parents think about education for their children. It's a dilemma for everybody. And but from a policy perspective, from a country, what should a country do? So when I was in the US, I had some very interesting experiences. I used to observe children, young children, 5 years old, 6 years old children. They used to be proudly raising funds for the Cancer Society. They used to come out on the streets and on a Sunday morning, and they used to raise money. I said, wow, this is good. And not that I was not used to it, but they used to be expressive and they used to be confident. And you see that confidence everywhere, whether, youths have that same confidence. Your co-workers in America have the same confidence, and they are not shy of, sharing their feelings and thoughts. And, I was very different compared to that. And I was shy about many things. And this was a new experience for me. So anyway, one thing led to another. And I used to think, what is it that makes countries prosperous? Why is America prosperous? Why was India not as prosperous? Okay, or why is India not prosperous? From whatever angle we want to look at it. So as I studied more and more, as I studied Vedanta and got more into our languages, Sanskrit, and our country, it struck me that it is a question of identity. One aspect. There are a lot of factors that makes a country prosperous. Okay, there are resources, there are smart use of resources, there is human resources, material wealth. Everything is there. That you can say America is blessed with a lot of land, etc. Population is less than in India. All this you can give. Yeah, all of this. There is a grain of truth in all of that. But there is one aspect that is particularly interesting to me, and that is cultural identity. Okay. America, every child is proud about how their forefathers came to the country. They built the country, and they talk about Washington, George Washington, and Abraham Lincoln, and things like that. And they're so proud about their past leaders and how they built the country with their own hands. They wrote the Constitution with their own hands. So these kids become they're very proud about their country. Now, if you look at India, it's different. And I want to share a couple of examples, how this difference manifests. Okay. In an interview, the CEO of Sony was asked a question. Sony, Japan, okay, was asked a question. How come you people produce fantastic products? Your televisions are great, your phones are great, all your electronic devices that you make, devices are all, your microwave ovens are great. How do you do this? You're consistently great. It's not like accidentally some product you became successful in. And you know what the CEO said? He said, it is there in our genes. He said, even if you come to our homes, when we place a flower vase with 5 flowers in that flower vase, okay, we spend a lot of time in it. We spend time and keep it beautifully. We spend time in it. And so we look for aesthetics and we give our best in whatever little we do. And so you see our culture in our products. Okay, that's what he said. Okay, that's our culture, he said. Now, same question was asked to Mr. Narayana Murthy, founder of Infosys. And he was asked, and he was a hero, and he's a hero, no doubt. We are all proud of Dr. Narayana Murthy. And he was asked the question 20 years ago, 15 years ago, hey, what is this? When it comes to information technology and computer science, it's Indians all over. Indians are experts at this. How is it that Indians are experts at this? Consistently. And his response was, we thank the British. The British taught us how to count. British taught us mathematics, and the Greeks taught us reasoning and philosophy. And so we were good students. And then that's why our Indians are all good in the computer technology, in IT. Okay. This was his response. Now, look at just, I want you to compare the two responses. Okay. Suppose he had said, you know what? Our ancestors were all mathematicians, astronomers, and scientists. Zinc was invented in India. Production of zinc 2000 years ago, we were experts. Okay, and this Bodhayana, he developed a theorem, and it's called the right-angled theorem. And what you call Pythagoras was really the Bodhayana theorem. And we know the shloka that talks about this theorem. And Pythagoras came to India 200, 300 years after Bodhayana invented this theorem. And you know what? Pythagoras may have learned it from us. So you call it Pythagoras theorem, but we call it Bodhayana theorem. Suppose he had answered like this, okay? And just imagine what kind of reverberations would have been there among the Indian community, among the IT community, Indians, and asking, what? Bodhayana? What? We invented the Pythagoras theorem? And, those kinds of things. Brahmagupta found out the circumference of Earth, okay? So many 1,500 years ago. And how is it possible? How come I never heard of these things? I never heard of it. So I'm not blaming Narayana Murthy. Please understand, our viewers should understand. I picked Narayana Murthy is an example. We are proud of him. But I am no different. I would have answered the same way if I was asked the question 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Exactly the same way. Why? Because we are all products of the same colonial, Macaulayite education system. That's why I'm speaking in English. I'm very comfortable in English language. Why? Because I'm a product of the same system. If you ask me to talk in my mother tongue Tamil, I'll have difficulty. I can talk colloquial Tamil, but I can't talk formal Tamil. Okay? That's because I'm a product of that system. So that's why that identity I felt was so important. The Japanese have a very solid identity. They're proud of their traditions and past. And Americans are also proud of their past. That's why we often say Americans are patriotic. Somebody asked me, why are Americans patriotic? Well, they built America with their own hands. And imagine your own child. You bring your child with your own hands. That's why you're so protective and you're so proud about your own children. What you bring up, what you build with your own hands, even if it is your home. This is a home I built 15 years ago. Every brick here was paid for by your hard-earned money. And you know exactly how many people worked on it. And you all decided what should be the color of the wall inside. Therefore, that ownership comes when you build something. So our ancestors built a lot of, what we see in India, our own culture, our temples, everything was built by them. But what happened, thanks to the British knew very well that the identity is very important. They came in and they said, how are we? They colonized Africa, they colonized entire Europe. And now they come to India and they're asking the question, these people are experts in languages, they are experts in various philosophies, they are so many dance forms. You go to south of India, there is one type of dance form. You go up to north, there is different. There's Kathakali, there's Kuchipudi, everything is different. My God, how am I going to colonize these people? Colonize means what? I am great, you need to listen to me. You need to obey my orders. That is colonization. How? So they said, we know how to colonize them. It's going to be a little difficult. And we need to go through at least 50 years, 100 years. We need to change their education system. We need to separate them, divorce them from their past, and make them attracted to the Western way of thinking and Western worldview. Then they will look up to the West, forgetting their own roots. This was literally, Max Muller and Macaulay and everything were all great players in this. And so that identity, how America built its identity, not only that. So America, if you go back, so they built an identity. The language, they said, we are not going to speak British English anymore. We are a separate country. We are a separate people. So you know what? They wrote a dictionary. There was a guy called Webster, Noah Webster. He wrote a dictionary. Why didn't they use the British dictionary? No, we are different. So they wrote a dictionary. It was called the something like Blue Back Speller or something like that. It was a spelling book. It was not even called a dictionary. And you know what? When that book was published, America, suddenly the book sold like hotcakes, and suddenly America knew who they were. They looked at the book, the blue book, as themselves, as their own identity. Imagine, they're all coming from outside. There's nothing in America, okay? The whole land is foreign to them. And so now they have a new identity. So like this, they built it. They built roads. And then they said, are we going to drive on the left side or right side? No, we're not going to drive on the left. British drive on the left. We are not the British. We are going to drive on the right side. What about the switches? Hey, to turn on the switch, you press at the bottom of the switch. And then you turn it off, you press on the top, right? They said, no, we're not going to do this. Who said this is the only way to do it? We're going to press the top to turn it on. We're going to press the bottom to turn it off. Opposite. Okay. I'm not saying we should do things purposely to be different from others, but I'm saying they have an identity. They carved out an identity for themselves. That's what I learned from being in America. And I think that's a very big part of why a country is prosperous. People are patriotic. People know what their ancestors died for, and so they're willing to work for the country. You see people that are honest. There was a person called Sankrant Sanu who did a research work 20 years ago. He asked the question, are Indians really corrupt? Okay. Are Indians really corrupt? He did some research. He crunched a lot of data. He looked at various countries in the world and did this research, and he concluded Indians are not corrupt. And he comes up with various other things. He says, no, inherently Indians are not corrupt. That's what he concludes. So it's very clear there is something that's missing, that was missing in India. And so that's the identity. So having made that point that the cultural identity is important for a human being of any population of any country, for them to be proud of their country and then work for what is good for the country. And so therefore, we can now talk about how the British, of course, as I said earlier, they basically, that project, colonization project, essentially ended up removing all traces of anything that is great about our past and then replacing it with everything that is great about the West, Europe and America. So today, so when I studied in school, when I came out of school, if you ask me to name all scientists, what scientists do you know? So I'll talk about Charles from Charles' law, Boyle from Boyle's law, Lavoisier, Schrödinger, and Maxwell's equations, etc., etc. Not a single Indian in that list. Not a single Indian. Ramanujan, I heard in the passing. C.V. Raman, I heard because he got a Nobel Prize. Okay, that's all. Besides that, everything was Western. Okay, but then the problem. So you can see how the problem manifests in India. The problem of lack of identity manifests in very interesting ways. Okay, I will ask the audience a question. Can you find, if you go to America, if you go to Google and find a street in America, can any street in America be named as Bin Laden Street? Yeah, Gulshanji is saying no. And no, not possible. Why would anybody in America name a street after a person who targeted America, who wanted to destroy America? No, they won't. Okay, I'll give a different example. Mexican War, 1850, American-Mexican War. There was a guy called Santa Anna Lopez, I think. That was a Mexican general, okay? And he attacked America. And then he backstabbed America and this and that. There's a whole story. I'm willing to bet, Vivekji, I'm willing to bet that, I can't see you, Vivekji. I'm willing to bet that there is no city, no village, no town, no street named after Santa Anna Lopez. Okay, would you agree with that, Vivekji?
Yeah, I think to the best of my knowledge, yes.
And so why? Because that's you wouldn't. Okay, now you come to India. You can go to Delhi. There is a street named after Aurangzeb. Only in India, you can find cities and streets named after Aurangzeb, a man who plundered the country, who massacred, who killed countless people. Okay, who killed his own brother, elder brother Dara Shikoh, who killed our Guru Tegh Bahadur. Killing a guru is a crime in our culture. For them, it's not a crime. It's something else. So anyway, why I'm saying all this is you can see the manifestation of the lack of identity. Only recently I hear that street was renamed after APJ Abdul Kalam. Okay, so I'm happy about that. So you can see manifestations of these things in our country, and you can see Nalanda University. Nalanda University, if you want to go by train, you have to get off at a railway station. Okay, and then go from there, you go to see Nalanda University, see the ruins of Nalanda University. Well, what's the name of the railway station? It's called Bhaktiyarpur. Okay, Bhaktiyarpur. What is this Bhaktiyarpur? Well, there was a guy called Bhaktiyar Khilji, and this man said, he looked at Nalanda University, and Nalanda University, people came from all over the world. People from China and East and from the West came, from Europe came to study. Nalanda University had a selection process like the selection processes are going on in every university, every foreign university. If somebody wants to do masters to go to USA, selection process, right? And only the best is selected by any university in any department. That process was going on in Nalanda University in 1400 years ago. Okay, this man asked the question, is there anything, is our Quran there in this library? I'm not blaming Quran, okay? I'm talking about this man. We have nothing against Islam, Quran and all that. So please don't, I want you to see the message here. And he just burnt it. So point is, why name a railway station after a person who destroyed the country, who wanted to destroy the country, plunder the country? How much was plundered? We need to question these things. That's all. We are not saying we have nothing against anybody. We need to go back to history and present these facts to students and ask the students to debate these things. Have two groups of people in the class and let them debate it. And so we have all these issues in India. And whereas now we go back to history and we need to highlight some of our own achievements. Yajnavalkya, 3000 BCE, they say, which is 5,000 years ago. And he comes up with, our Indians were all great astronomers. I didn't come to know about all this when I studied, of course, but later on I had to study and I had to learn some of these things. And he says the distance from the earth to the sun is 108 times the diameter of the sun. 108 times the diameter of the sun is the distance from the earth to the sun. The distance from the earth to the moon, which is very close by, is 108 times the diameter of the moon. This is what he says. Today's numbers are 107.6 for sun and something like 110 for the moon. Okay, how could he do that? Is it just he got something in the dream and then he just dreamt it up and said it? Hey, they must have shouldn't we do some research on it? Shouldn't India set up universities, set up research centers to look up all these things and fund our people? And those who are interested in working on this, go. If you have to read Sanskrit, yeah, we will set up the Sanskrit institutes. And because these are all written in Sanskrit. And if I read you a particular shloka, look at this. Tishye Pratyanala Sevati Bana Netre. And then Yo Nandane Dinamanam Avuta Katva Bhaji. Suppose I say this. Even I don't know what it means, really. And this is not like a shloka, Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarva Artha Sadhake. So this everybody knows. All over India, all Indians know this. Sahana Bhavatu. Everybody knows. But the shloka I chanted just now, very few people will nod their head. Nobody will know. This shloka, Dr. M.L. Raja recently presented. He was talking about Kali Yuga. He says this shloka contains the age of Kali Yuga. Contains the timeline of Adi Shankaracharya. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a statement? Somebody makes a statement like this. We must know Sanskrit, right, to understand this shloka. And we must know that there is a date embedded in this shloka. Okay, I don't need to get to the details, but there is a date embedded. There is 2563 or something. 2563 of the Kali Yuga. That is, see, our timeline, our reference frame, if you for all our elders, they used to refer to Kali Yuga. This BCE and current era, that 2000 years ago, that's a new Abrahamic British imposed system on us. But before that, we used to use Kali Yuga as the starting date. And so it's 2000 something, 500. And that amounts to, and Kali Yuga, Dr. Raja says, is 3101 BCE, which is 5,100 years ago. So if this shloka says 2563, that means Adi Shankara was born about 2500 years ago. Okay, I hope this is not a complicated calculation. Okay, so look at that. In order to know about ourselves, we need to know a lot of Sanskrit. We need to have people like Dr. Raja doing research on this. We need to have the government fund institutes that can work on these kinds of problems to understand our own past. Otherwise, what happens? We end up swallowing whatever was written by the British. British had an agenda. They did something called anchoring, sheet anchoring. Okay, some of the audience may know what this is. They decided, nothing can be better than Abrahamic accomplishments, Abrahamic timeline. So anything that happened in India must be after Abraham. Therefore, everything they tried to fit it within the last 200 years. This is how it is. How can we have our children study this kind of history? No, not acceptable. We are ruining the minds of our children by teaching them stuff that was manufactured. These are all manufactured history. So I think there is a lot of work to be done here, and so we have a lot of things like this. Brahmagupta, he did sum of squares, sum of cubes, trigonometric series, and things like that, and he developed the circumference of Earth to be 36,000 kilometers. Today's number is about 40,000 kilometers, and I already mentioned to you Yajnavalkya. So Madhavas of Sangama Grama. Okay, so from Kerala. So he lived in 1350. That is about 650 years ago, 700 years ago. Okay, so he also was a mathematician and philosopher, trigonometric series, calculus, and so forth. And 100 years before Newton was born. If somebody asks any student today, who is the father of calculus? Who is the inventor of calculus? We will say Newton, right? Isaac Newton. That's the answer. That's the right answer. That's what will give you marks in your exam. Sangamagrama, Madhava of Sangamagrama. He did it. He established the Kerala School of Astronomy and Mathematics, of which Narayana Bhattacharya, I think some of you will know him, as the author of Narayaniam. Okay, look at that. Look at our past. It is awe-inspiring when I see every fact. I look at it and I said, this is what Indians need to know. In order for India to be Mahan, they say, make Bharat Mahan. Mera Bharat Mahan, right? Mera Bharat Mahan is a good attitude to have, but Mera Bharat Mahan nahi hai. Is not yet. We need to make Bharat Mahan. That's my thesis, is let's make Bharat Mahan. And so we have things like this. Greatest dishonesty of our times. Dr. Raj Vedam calls it greatest dishonesty of our times. You know what he says? Look at this. He says, we've got so many universities in India. Chanakya wrote Arthashastra in Takshashila, which is in near Afghanistan, okay? Uzbekistan or something like that. And Chanakya lived there. Huh? Pakistan, okay. And then we've got Bhaskara 1, Bhaskara 2. They wrote treatises called Leelavati and things like that. We got Brahmagupta, and then we got in the south, we've got universities. We've got the Nagarjuna Mahavidyalaya in the today's Andhra area. We've got, of course, I mentioned Kerala School of Mathematics. In Madhya Pradesh, we have what is it called? There's a golden triangle.
Bodhshala.
Okay.
Bodhshala.
Bodhshala. Morena. I think it's called Morena. Yeah. Golden Triangle, Bodhshala. Gujarat, we have Vallabhi University we used to have. This is all 1,500 years ago. America.
Jayakumarji, Kanchipuram had Gatikasthanam.
Gatikasthanam, exactly. Raj Vedam, his postulates that Pythagoras 2,500 years ago visited Kanchipuram. Okay. Wouldn't it be exciting for us to tell these stories to our children, and the children should be inspired by it? When I studied history, I used to sleep in the class. Okay, we think of history as a course that you have to pass. You have to pass history exams. Okay, But look at how much excitement. I feel like I want to go back to school and study history. And what I was talking to many, I do talk to many youth and college students. And the last time I spoke to these about 6 months ago, and this child said, "Uncle, why don't you come to my school in Hyderabad and teach?" This is what she said. I said, "Amma, I may say some good words, but I'm not an expert in this. But I agree. I'm happy you said that you love this." And because she was talking about how boring history is, etc. And so we've got all these universities all over, of course, not to mention Nalanda. And you see Bihar and Assam, those areas, there were a lot of universities. Okay. And with so much going on, thousands of years ago, 2000 years ago, the British history, the history that we study in our textbooks, what does it say? It talks about Indus Valley civilization in the northwest of India, right? And then what about to the east of that? Vast open lands, nothing happening there. The Aryans came and they settled in the Indus Valley. They developed a civilization called the Indus Valley civilization. And then they pushed the natives down south, etc. There's a story called Aryan invasion theory. Nothing, none of these accomplishments play any role. Okay. Navagati, the ships, the people who used to go in ships, and all the people, Vasco da Gama and all this you see here, they wanted Indians to be there in the ships because Indians were expert in astronomy and therefore experts in navigation. The word Navagati is the navigation is a copy of the word Navagati. Nav means nav. Nav means boat or ship. Gati means movement. Movement of ship is called navigation. Look at that. That's that word in English itself. Okay. Like this, we can say a lot. And so medicine, doctors, they wanted doctors from Indian because Indian medicine was advanced those days. And so much was there. How come our history books don't talk about it? Well, that's because our history books were manufactured by people who had no vested interest in this country. There is a guy called, there is a thinker. His name is, what's his name? Story of Philosophy. He wrote that book. Will Durant, okay? Will Durant, that's the name. Will Durant, he wants to write the book called Story of Philosophy, and he comes to India about 200 years ago, 250 years ago, 200, and then he's shocked because he heard so much about India and its progress and prosperity and this and that, love affair between America and Europe and India. He comes, he's shocked. Do you know why he's shocked? He sees people on the streets. He sees beggars. He sees people who are clueless. And he said, this is not the India I had in mind. What happened? Well, what happened? In the 1900 or in the 1750, there is a Professor Angus Madison. He did some research from Sweden. He was a professor in Europe. He passed away recently, about 4 or 5 years ago. He did a research to study the economy of countries going back to 2000 years ago. Okay. Can you imagine this person, what he wants to do? And he finds out that the economies that were prosperous about in the 1850s and 1900 is India and China. India's share of the world trade was 25%. What does it mean to an average person? I'll translate that. Today, America's share of the global commerce, global GDP is about 20+%, 23%, which means every 100 rupees that anybody in the world spends, 23 rupees of that goes to America. Okay, that's a layman's person of thinking about this. Okay, and so India was like that in 1850, 1800. Okay, can you imagine that? And from that 23%, you can see after the British came, the graph is coming down. 20, 15, 10, 5. By the time the British left, it was 3%. 3%. That's why I tell, one of the things our Indian education system should provide our children is facts of this nature. And every Indian must understand very clearly the British looted the country. This one graph is sufficient. And Will Durant proves it. He comes, he's shocked. Instead of writing this book, History of Philosophy, he writes a book called The Case for India. Look it up. I want our audience to look up. It's PDF is available. Look up The Case for India. He said, this is the atrocity committed by the British on Indian soil is unpardonable. Case for India, he says. And he talks about debt and how the debt of India grew over so many years and how Indians were forced to sell their products at cheap prices and buy products at exorbitant prices. India was just made into a poor nation. And we were looking, as part of this Indian history awareness and research, we were asked to look at some textbook. One of the states of India wanted us to review their state social studies textbooks. SCERT. Okay, that's the state equivalent of the national NCERT. So we looked at it. So 6th, 7th, 8th, they asked us to look at the 9th, they asked us to look at the 10th. So we did all that. We provided some feedback. And for example, they say things like this. During this when the British wanted to revolutionize farming, the Indians suffered famines. And during the famines, thousands lost their lives. This is what was read. We provided feedback to them. We gave them all kinds of research papers and we said, hey, in the famine of 1780, West Bengal famine, in that one famine alone, 10 million Indians lost their lives. 10 million. Then there was a Bengal famine in 1943. And in that Bengal famine, 3.5 million Indians lost their lives. And then there is a Madras famine, another 6 million lost their lives, etc. So there is a whole list of famines and millions of people lost their lives. And here this book says thousands lost their lives. After they got the feedback, they changed the textbook. They actually changed the textbook. I'm very happy. The state government actually changed the textbook and they changed that word thousands to millions. It is still hiding a lot of fact, but still that's some improvement. So I think this is the journey that I see for India, and so here what we want to do is we want to convert this history, in one word, one phrase, if you want me to say, his story has to be changed to our story. His story about us should be converted to our story about us. Because who else but us can talk about our story and our ancestors? So that's the journey the Indian government has to chart. And as far as history is concerned, so I did spend a lot of time on history and identity. And so history becomes very important, even though history is not my subject, really speaking. And my subject really is Vedanta, it's Sanskrit, it's talking to youth. But I do spend a lot of time with youth. And so, I'm passionate about this aspect of history and textbooks and so forth. And so that brings us to the next question, which is, this history is the corrected history will teach us who are we? Who are we as a people, as a civilization, as a country? Who are we? Okay. When I sent this information about today's webinar to a friend of mine who was a professor at Indian Institute of Science, he joked. He said, "Who are we? Hey, who are we? It's a Chinese company. Be careful, Jayakumar," he said. That HUAWEI, right? He was just joking. And it's a, telecommunications and consumer electronics company, right? Chinese company. That's a joke anyway. So this tells us who we are. We need to educate our children who we are. Who are we? Okay. Next step, after all that is done, then we come to, what did our ancestors think about life? What was their worldview? What did they think about this human life? What is it we are seeking? Because after everything is said and done, we are going to find fundamental questions. Why am I suffering? Why am I sad? Why is my life like this when everybody else is enjoying life? These questions come to each one of us sooner or later. And so that question, of course, our ancestors were spent so much time on it. Our Vedas is littered with these kinds of thoughts, and we've got so many I'm shy of using the word philosophers. Thinkers, let's say. Philosopher, I don't want to use. I don't say Shankara is a philosopher. Do you know why? That's because philosophy is a speculative subject. It's an optional subject like anything else, like electronics or engineering or architecture. Okay, optional. But for us, philosophy, Siddhanta is not optional. Bhagavad Gita is there in our puja room. Vedas is there in our puja room. We chant these mantras every day. So it's not optional. For us, it's life or death. Okay. Therefore, I cannot call Adi Shankaracharya as a philosopher. And in that book, Will Durant, he talks about Adi Shankaracharya. He talks about all the philosophers, Western philosophers, Hume and Immanuel Kant and things like that. And then he says, I am not including Adi Shankaracharya because he was a religious man. I mean, I think that's unfair, but at least I'm happy that he actually mentioned Adi Shankaracharya's name. And so, I mean, we have enough. We have enough here in India. After death, what happens to me? That question comes. Well, you will go to heaven. You will go to Vaikunt, or you will go to Kailas and be with Shiva. That's one philosophy. Or you can have a philosophy. Hey, Shiva and Vishnu are all pervasive, everybody, and you are part of Shiva, Vishnu already. And still, you will go to Vishnu. Will take care of you after death. And then you got Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, which says, hey, you are making a mistake. You are thinking God is different from you. You are thinking the world is different from you. You better inquire into who you are. Who am I? That's how this famous question, who am I, which every Indian asks as though it's their own thing, which is their own thing. And I'm very happy if they say it's own thing. And only in India you find this kind of a question that is addressed. And you see, we can talk about Upanishads where this is talked about quite a bit. And I ask college students sometimes, do you know Satyameva Jayate? Yes, uncle, I know what Satyameva Jayate. What is Satyameva Jayate? Hey, it's written in the bottom of this Ashoka Chakra, you see Satyameva Jayate. Yes, that Satyameva Jayate is a statement from the Upanishad. Okay, Mundaka Upanishad. And we can talk about what it means, etc. So they say truth always triumphs and so forth. That comes from this Upanishad, which who knows how old this is, thousands of years ago. And one of my students reminded me recently. What is that? Nabhasprusham Deeptam. And Nabhasprusham Deeptam. That is the motto of the Indian Air Force. Can you imagine that? That statement is from the Bhagavad Gita, 11th chapter, where Bhagavan Krishna is talking about Vishwarupa. Okay? Nabhasprusham Deeptam means the glory, it's our glory to reach the skies. And we aim to reach the skies. That's the motto of the Air Force. And then there is another statement, Swadharme Nidhanam Shreyaha. Okay, that's another statement made by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And there is a statement which talks about do your duty, that's most important, and don't be carried away by something else or do something else that is not natural to you. So here, Swadharme Nidhanam Shreyaha. Death is better doing your own duty is better than doing something that is not your duty. That is what Krishna is saying. And so that is the motto of the Madras Regiment. Madras Regiment of the Indian armed forces. This must have been established during the British time, and I don't know when the motto really was instituted. But Bhagavad Gita, look at that. So the things that we think are very important to us are all coming from Bhagavad Gita. They're all coming from the Upanishads, which are part of the Vedas. And so this who am I is a question that is very unique to our culture, and that must be exposed to our children, high school children and college students. They're all eager. I can see it in their eyes wherever I go. So it must be part of the curriculum. And I looked at the Karnataka high school textbook, 9th grade textbook. One line about Upanishads, and it says Upanishads are all about nature worship, yaga, and black magic. And Upanishads is the cause of caste system in India. Okay. Upanishad. I've been studying Upanishad for the last 20 years. I have not seen a single word of caste system in Upanishads. This is what we teach our children today. Gulshan ji, this is our problem. Okay, so we start with the problem. Before providing solutions, we need to know what the problem is. Only when we understand the problem, we can find out a solution and implement a solution. Correct? And so that's why I'm spending time trying to give these different ideas so our folks can spend time thinking about it. And Sanskrit as a language, has to be highlighted. And I already gave an example of that shloka where Shankaracharya's date of birth is hidden, and how are you going to figure it out without knowing Sanskrit? There was a time during the peak of the British Indo-British communication in the colonial period, when in Britain, if you did not visit India and if you did not know Sanskrit, you are nobody. Okay, in Britain you are nobody. Okay, if you visited India and if you knew Sanskrit, then you are my Lord, right? That word Lord is there. So that's how it is. And we've got the more I think about it, and Vedanta is there, but I would rather teach my children more about our own history, which has so many accomplishments, and then they will automatically come to Vedanta. They will automatically come to our Upanishads. We don't need to overdo this, because Sayanacharya, some 3,000 years ago, I think, he found out the speed of light. I never knew this. His estimate was 300,000 kilometers per second. Today, the scientific estimate is 299,972 kilometers per second. 28 kilometers less than 3,000, the estimate of Sayanacharya. Can you imagine if somebody had told me this and a list of things like this? Wouldn't it inspire our children? And so it's important. Raji Malhotra talks about, this IAS, the people who enter civil services of India, and they need to be taught all these things. They are parroting narratives, Western narratives. Our IAS officers don't even know what their country is. How are they going to lead this country? So we've got to work on multiple fronts here. And so often this is told, that Sanskrit is a Deva Bhasha. Deva Bhasha, okay? Means the language of the gods. So I'm going to say it a little differently. I'm saying our project must be to convert the Deva Bhasha to Desha Bhasha. Okay? Convert Deva Bhasha to our Bhasha, because there is a connotation to Deva Bhasha. If you say it is Deva Bhasha, then it's easy to say, oh, it's the language of the gods. What have I got to do with it? Leave it with the gods, let them be happy with Sanskrit. I'm saying no, there is so much. There is a part 2, we can talk about Sanskrit, the beauty of Sanskrit and how it can revolutionize our thinking and our country. We can talk about that. But I'm saying here, for our purposes, converting Desha Bhasha to, Deva Bhasha to Desha Bhasha. That should be the kind of a guiding principle for our educators, policy developers. So anyway, now it's about 9:05 here, and we've spent quite a bit of time. So I'll try to conclude here pretty fast. And so what can India do? So already I gave some ideas here, and we have not focused on Veda Pathashalas, means the schools which were part of our temple ecosystem. Every temple had an ecosystem. They had a lot of land. They had institutes. They had people studying various sciences, and they studied Sanskrit. And of course, Veda Pathashalas were there. Our Veda Pathashalas of today, which were supported by our kings in the past, today they have no support. If we lose our Veda Pathashalas, in another 20, 30, 40 years, India will be a different country. It's a barren country. It's a Veda Pathashalas, which are the crucible, which are the cradle of our civilization. We don't hear about it in the popular narratives. Who talks about Veda Pathashala? We don't send our children to Veda Pathashalas. Okay, I'm looking for children, because we support Veda Pathashalas to the extent we can financially, and we are looking for children, and there are not enough children. It's a tragedy. Okay, so we need to fix that. The government has to come and say, okay, we are sponsoring 10,000 Veda Pathashalas all over the country. We will pay for the fees of these children and we will teach them all the modern education plus the Vedas. Okay, that must be immediately done by the Indian government. And so I think that something like that will make a big difference in the lives of children, youths of our country, which will be the people who will lead the country into the future. And so who are we? Who am I? Making Deva Bhasha into Desha Bhasha, converting his story to our story. These are some of the themes that I'm very interested in, that I would like to see our leaders of this country, of Bharat Mata, move us towards. And I think that will help every person in India, not just Hindus or Muslims, everybody. Muslims will be better off, Christians will be better off, Hindus will be better off, atheists will be better off. Everybody should know their past. So that's my thesis. And I hope I was helpful somewhat, Gulshan ji. I don't know what you had in mind, but I hope this can be something that can help your audience formulate their thoughts also. I want to thank you, Gulshan ji, for your invitation and for all the work you do. And you showed a lot of slides covering so many topics like water conservation and women's empowerment. These are all very, very critical aspects of India's development. And I salute you for all the work you do. And thank you once again for the time. And I'll be happy to answer any questions our audience may have.
Namaskar, Jayakumar ji.
Yes, namaste.
So I'm going to take one of the questions I always bothers me is what made you take that? I think I gave you a hint at the answer, but I want to hear it in your own words. I mean, typically, you grew up on a diet of, all the Western stuff, and which is good. And then you went into IIT and then Purdue, and as you said, the Budweiser days, and suddenly you take a U-turn. Can you talk a little bit about your transformation? What made you kind of come back from there into the roots? How did that happen?
Yeah, just for the audience, by the way, the audience may not have understood your statement, advisor, Budweiser. Okay. So I want to tell the audience that there is a brand of beer called Budweiser. Okay. In America. I don't know if it is there in India or not. And so the graduate students' life revolves around getting up in the morning, going to college, doing the research, coming back, sleeping, going to college, coming back. So this journey is described by the statement that Vivekji mentioned. Advisor means what? Because the graduate students has an advisor, a professor. An advisor, come home, and then Budweiser. And then there's one more part of it. And then apartment, department. Apartment, department. This is the life. Okay. Anyway, so I think that's a tough question, Vivekji, and it's very hard to say what makes people do what they do. And definitely, Swami Dayananda ji was a big inspiration in my life. And, somebody who makes us discover something that we don't know. And so that he's been a big inspiration for me. But beyond that, it's hard to speculate. And of course, my grandparents were there, and I learned a lot of our own culture from my grandmother and my parents, of course. And so that is all there, but it's hard to pinpoint something right now, Vivekji. But definitely Pujya Swamiji is a big inspiration. Yeah.
Because I'll tell you why. I mean, the reason I asked that question is probably there are many more Jayakumars waiting to be transformed by, and we need, if we need more Jayakumars, we definitely need more Pujya Swamijis. And you don't get people of Pujya Swamiji's stature. You get only once in a life, very, very blue moon, so to speak, and we know what kind of a towering personality he was. The reason I asked that is, of course, there is one more person who has been deeply inspired by Pujya Swamiji and who did this is Rajiv Malhotra. So, so Pujya Swamiji influence is so pervasive. And when I meet our people from our own communities, they are not as informed as some of my own Western friends. I mean, they don't know about Shankara. They don't know about Aryabhatta. In fact, they're clueless. I mean, they think everything is, after Vedas were the dark ages. It is basically the colonial education that really set us on the path of glory. I mean, and you talked about a little bit about Narayan Murthy. I'm sure there are many more in their company who are blissfully ignorant. There's nothing wrong with them. Actually, most of them probably don't even want to accept that the Aryan inflation theory was kind of has been somewhat debunked. How do you go and work with these? And a lot of them they exist in our own Houston kind of group too. We've seen that a whole lot. So that is something we need to be cognizant of. And because I'm not even telling we need to fix our people, I mean others, but how do we talk to our own brethren and get them back and talk a little bit about this? So that is the biggest worry for me. Because when I go and, let's say I have a beard that I'm not shaving, I think something, what has happened to you? You're supposed to be clean shaven. I said, okay, no, this is my tradition. In fact, I was reminded of what Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati, somebody asked, why are you growing a beard? He profoundly said, I don't grow a beard, it just grows. I don't happen to shave it. So there is something about the Indian tradition. We are into all this. We are not into this external appearances. We are more about internal. And somewhere people bother only about this. And this is our own people. In fact, I've never had an American friend ask me these questions. They always accept me for who I am. I used to have a bumper sticker that said Sanskrit is a great language. And they just ask me, what is Sanskrit? They never said, we don't understand what you're doing. So I'm just telling you, our own people are having so much of this difference anxiety. How do we fix this?
Again, I think I addressed that in the talk, which is education. Only education can fix these kinds of problems, because this is a cognitive problem. This is a problem here. It's not a problem of lack of wealth. It's not like we did not have money to buy books. It's not like we did not have money to go to universities and colleges. And you are a researcher, Dr. Vivek. And so we don't lack anything. And so what we need is exposure to all these facts. And these days, look at that. These days, I see a lot of it happening. So this online medium has become a big thing, especially thanks to the pandemic. And so there's a lot of options. And my own students, my own Sanskrit class students and my own Bhagavad Gita students are now taking so many courses, online courses, Sanskrit and Nyaya and Kalidasa's poetry and this and that. There's so many offerings. Okay, in your own America, you've got Hindu University of America. Kalyan Vishwanathan is doing great work. And so I think people have to kind of turn their attention slowly towards, and locally you can also do something to, kind of broadcast these kinds of messages. And, sooner or later it will catch up. So I don't think, I don't see it as a, we should look at it as a we should not get alarmed over it. I hope, as long as we keep working towards that vision, I think it will take care of itself.
Vivekji, can I take on a few questions?
Sir, please, aapka.
Okay, Nene. I would first of all, I become more humble this evening after listening to you. Right from the bottom of the soul, spirit, and heart, you spoke to all of us. There are a couple of questions which I'll just take on from the audience side, if you'll permit me. Then I can just work on. What makes for a prosperous country? What makes for a prosperous country?
Yeah, so that was how I started this presentation. And it's a very broad question. I'm not qualified to answer the question in complete. And as I said, there are a lot of factors that makes for a prosperous country. My focus is more on as an individual and as a cultural identity of a human being. Okay. The person must belong. I belong to this country. I'm very proud about this country. Okay. That feeling, if a person has, if a citizen has, that itself will make a country prosperous.
Okay.
I hope I'm not simplifying it too much. As I said, there are a lot of factors. But from my point of view, I am more focused on that cultural identity. And that person is rooted. He or she cannot be taken for granted. He or she will not be carried away by some glitter out there. Because that person knows about his past, her past. That's my view, Gulshanji.
How about, you have covered it so well. I've got a practical difficulty. And you got to help me out, because I'm too humble and I do not I do not have that much of knowledge being acquired, accumulated, and I'm not a visionary also, but I'm just a humble soldier and I want to learn in a way. Children have gone very far from us. Children, our youth have gone very far from us. They are living in a digital world. They are living in a platonic world. They are not living with the reality of the life. The gadgets, the technology, and everything in the entire ecosystem has made life in such a way. Nobody wants to work hard. We have been told in economics and commerce, work smart. Okay. And जब श्रम नहीं है, when you do not do physical labor, then when you do not sweat, I do not know, but that philosophy may be wrong, but how do we get our children back when we are talking about Vedanta, when we are talking about Vedas, when we are talking about values, when we are talking about ethics, when we are talking about cultural identity, when we are talking about our rich heritage, how do we get children back? What do we do?
Yeah. That's again a tough question, Gulshanji. And in the time that we have, I don't know how much we can do. That itself is a topic of another big talk. But coming back to what the point of this presentation, we have to look forward, look to the future. Okay. And we have to say, what is it we need to do now? So the future children, the future, what we are educating children today is right for the country. Okay. It will build a strong foundation for this country. That's the way we need to look at it. And so that is where there is no shortcut, unfortunately, Gulshanji. So for example, I conduct a course, a 1-year course for college students, one class a week. Okay, I did that for a year. And college students from various backgrounds, many people clueless. And so I engaged with them and I actually asked them, what do you want to learn? I did not say what I'm going to teach them. I told them, what is it you want to learn? Why are you here? You're all college students. You're so busy. And why should you be sitting in front of a stranger for 1 hour on a Sunday night? This is what I asked them. And they were open. They said, we want to know, how to prioritize things in our life. Now, there is a lot of pressure in my college. And how do I handle pressure? And we've learned things. Now, some of the things we don't know if it is right or wrong. We don't know anything about our country. We don't know anything about our culture. So it came from them. Whatever I presented today is actually a result of my dialogues with youths like that. And so that 1 year I conducted courses. This particular series of discussions, they were all discussion sessions. They're not classes. And I told them the problem with alcohol. I found a beautiful video made in Australia, and they talked about how alcohol consumption, how it impacts the brain. Fantastic 3-minute video, 4-minute video. I showed them. I talked about drugs, and I talked about what all happens in college. And then I told them, I broke the group into two. And I said, one group, they are sitting in a bar having fun. And the other group, I told them, you are walking outside and this group calls you in. Hey guys, what are you doing on a Friday night or a Saturday night? You're supposed to be in the bar. I told this A group, your job is to convince this group to come inside the bar. I told this group, your job must be to convince this group to say, you guys are wasting your time. You're doing a stupid thing. Come outside, I'll show you life. And I was amazed at this debate. It went on and on for 35 minutes. I had to stop it. And so what I'm saying is, children already have it. We just have to develop the right framework to bring it out of them. Everybody is nice and everybody knows they have pride in their country. They have pride in their past. We just have to make it, bring it out of them. So I am not saying it's easy or anything like that, but we need to spend time thinking about these things. And that's why I bring the government in. The government should support these kind of initiatives. Okay. And say, hey guys, we want to do these kinds of things. And, this does not require much funding also, but do it. So what kind of courses can we develop for these kinds of things who are grown up? What about those who are younger? What kind of things do we teach? So some of the things we need to do it in school itself. And as I said, the problem is in the school textbooks itself. So undoing that is something that we have to focus on in India.
Finally, would you be kind enough to, because it's very difficult to get that answer for myself, who am I?
Who are you? Okay.
So
I'll tell.
Jayakumar ji, can I make an observation here with your permission?
Yeah, please do.
So this question, rhetorical question, if you want to put it that way, has been really synonymous with the great South Indian, but of course, world universal guru, Ramana Maharshi of Tirumala. I mean, we say Tiruvannamalai, but he belongs to the whole universe. So he used to always ask this question, who am I? In Tamil, they call it Naan Yare, or who am I? And somebody went and asked, Swamiji or Guruji, who am I? He said, because the idea was, Swamiji, you know who you are, who am I? Can you answer that? He said, I might have found the answer to the question, who am I? But I can't answer the question, who are you? You have to find that. So I'm just giving you an observation here. I thought that was very profound. The way Swamiji said, who am I? Naan yaar, yanak theriyum. Nee yaar, nee terjikanam. So basically that was Tamil. What is it? Main janta hu, main kaun hu. Tumko pata kar raha hai ki tum kaun ho. This is really what the Swamiji meant or Ramana Maharshi ji meant. Just kind of wanted to share that.
Gulshan ji, there you go. You got the answer. There could not be a better answer than that. But it's a big topic, so I don't want our audience to, I don't want to sidetrack the audience. But it's an important question, no doubt, Gulshan ji. And that's what all our Upanishads talk about. That's what Bhagavad Gita talks about. And we don't want to trivialize that by in a sentence or two. So and it's getting late for the audience, so I'm just watching, and I'm curious if the audience has any questions as well.
We'll take on.
I have one question, Jayakumar ji. See, I know. I mean, how did you? What is your assessment of this U-turn theory and breaking India and all that? Rajiv Malhotra talks about it quite a bit. And I know we kind of had all those webinars 5-7 years back. It's very prescient of you. How did you pick on those trends? And now that we've had at least 5-7 years after all that seminars have happened, where do you see we are headed? What is your reflection in a longitudinal sense?
See, I agree with the U-turn theory. For the audience, for those of you who don't know what U-turn theory is, that is proposed by Rajiv Malhotra. It's basically a Westerner coming to India and in awe of whether it is yoga or philosophy or Ayurveda, Indian medicine systems, studies everything from here, and then goes back to America, Europe, or wherever, and then presents it as his own, patents it. No accreditation, no credit given to gurus. In our culture is basically doing namaskar to our gurus. And we don't take credit for the things because the things are already coming from the top. There's nothing much, but the opposite of that happens. And so that's called U-turn. So he comes to India, picks it up and just overflows with devotion and this and that, and then goes back and he continues to salute the guru, and after time he just presents it as his own stuff. This is called U-turn theory. So it's true, it happens a lot. We can give dozens of examples that's going on, but the point is this, Vivek ji, go back to we have to work hard. I tell my friends, why is it like that and what needs to be done? I said the British spent 200 years studying our culture. 100 years. Max Muller studied the entire Rig Veda and translated the Rig Veda. Now tell me, Gulshan ji and Vivek ji, how many of us are willing to study the Rig Veda? They have no vested interest in the Vedas, okay? They studied it so that the Indians will read the Max Muller translation of Rig Veda and thereby get influenced by the West. That was his objective. Max Muller was the first major consultant of the British. And I'm told that he never even visited India. So sitting in Germany, he did all these things. I don't know if it's true or not, but as of today, that's what I believe in. So the point is this, what are we willing to do? Are we going to have us and our children study Sanskrit? Max Miller could do it. So many people could do it, and they did it for a different purpose. But can I do it for my purposes? It's a hard question to answer. We don't have quick solutions. We want quick solutions, but unfortunately, there is not a quick solution, and that's okay. It's not unfortunate, because the real solution is, now I see it happening all the time. A lot of people are studying, going back, doing their homework, okay, studying history and presenting ideas from history and getting inspired, and studying the Vedas, studying Sanskrit and so forth. So it's happening, and so that's what I want to share, Vivekji.
In a very humble way, before we wind up this particular session, when I placed my, deepest gratitudes and thanks before you, and in a very humble way, I think somewhere we are moving in the direction, and today, with your views, our humble baby steps have been further strengthened. It is education, need-based education, heritage-based education, cultural-based education, ancestral-based education. My forefathers, what values and ethics they followed in their life, that kind of a ecosystem of education, and where we are proud of our culture, heritage, identity, and our own civilization. And I do not know, sir. Finally, I do not know why it happened. And what you mentioned humbly in a very polite way initially, I feel more comfortable when I'm talking in English language, maybe because of the culture in which we have developed. And I studied in a government school, in a very, very village, rural, rustic school. But when I joined the armed forces, and when you go to the army, the functions and all, you're not allowed to put on the round collar. You got to have the complete collar, otherwise you can't enter over there. You got to put on tie, you can't go without that. But anyway, I don't want to. So I have stopped. I have never ever gone for any function. I do not go. But what I'm sharing over here is that somewhere we have to empower our education ecosystem under the new education policy with people like you. Those can really give us the correct course direction, and with the compass, so that our ship moves in the right direction. And well, I think there's a lot to take from you in the subsequent programs sometime, depending on your convenience. Today is just a teaser for my soul, for my spirit, and for my cerebrum. I would like to take on more in future from you. With these words, I would like to put my deepest and gratitudes and thanks to you for having spared your most valuable time, and praying all the good days for your wisdom coming to us in future. And I'm thankful to Vivek Shankar Natarajan ji also to bring us uh, to your wisdom and to closer to you. And we could pick up some of the threads this evening, because there's always a paucity of time, and you got to see a couple of things as you made a mention. So well, we will take on sometime later, but we are soldiers. We'll keep moving. We will keep doing our webinars. We'll keep taking the wisdom and intellectual
Gulshanji,
capital. Yes.
sorry to make a leader to take the floor for 1 second. An idea came to my mind. In the next 3 months, I think around April, May will be Adi Shankaracharya Jayanti. I think we should have a keynote address by Jayakumar ji on the contributions of Adi Shankaracharya to the Indian philosophy, Indian thought process. I think we need that. I think we need to bring Jayakumar ji once in a while for a special talk. I mean, because I don't even think there is a need for a one-on, like a panel or anything. He's like a Guruji now. Guruji को व्यासपीठ देना चाहिए, और वो व्यासपीठ से जब संबोधन करते हैं तो वो हमको ज्ञान की गंगा वहां से बहती है. तो आप मेरे से सहमत होंगे कि जय कुमार जी का जो स्टेचर है, जो अस्तित्व है, ही इज अ गुरुजी, उनको व्यासपीठ देके हमको सम्मान के साथ उनको अगले बार जो अभी शंकराचार्य जयंती या गुरु पूर्णिमा, उस जो पावन पर्व होते हैं हमारे, उस पे हमको बुलाना चाहिए, निमंत्रण देना चाहिए। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Very kind of you. It's all up to his kindness that whenever he accepts our humble request. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for coming this evening. Thanks for accepting the request of this humble soldier. And we have been enriched, we have been enlightened, and we got lots of insight today. Pranam, namaskar. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very